everyone. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for our webinar, Expect Greatness, 5 Ways to Transform Teaching and Learning at Your School. My name is Kayla Burrow, and I work for AVID Center, an educational nonprofit that supports college and career readiness for all students. Before we get started, let's go over a little housekeeping. All participants are currently in listen-only mode, but we do encourage you to communicate with us using the chat feature. If you move your mouse over to the center of your screen, a menu should appear at the bottom of our presentation. There's a talk bubble icon. Just click that to turn on your chat, and you'll be able to submit questions to us throughout the presentation. We will have Q&A after the presentation, so again, just submit those questions in chat, and my colleague Josh and I will collect those. Lastly, this webinar will be recorded and will be sent to you early next week. Now, our presenters today are Leonard Galloway, principal of Robert Anderson Middle School in Anderson, South Carolina, one of our AVID National Demonstration Schools. And joining us from Dallas is Ben Solomon, the manager of our AVID Learning Programs, Products, and Services team. Now, I'm going to turn things over to Ben and let him take it away.
All right, thanks so much, Kayla. LG joining us from North Carolina. I'm joining us from Dallas right now, and we got 120 participants, which is amazing. I know you guys are sprinkled all over the country and all over the world, just like all of our AVID partner schools out there. So thank you so much for prioritizing this today and joining us for this kind of 30-minute tour through ways to transform teaching and learning at my school. So to kind of get our heads moving in the direction that we wanted to discuss with you guys today, we had a colleague that was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and a slide was presented by EdMarketer, which is the marketing arm of EdWeek, and they had surveyed district leaders and given them 20 or 25 options and said, choose the top 3 challenges that you are facing at your school or in your district. And they sent us a picture of the results there, and they said, hey, next time you talk to district leaders, make sure you hit on these things. And as we saw the results of that, we said that is perfectly aligned with what we're going to talk about today. Because what the top challenges that district leaders face is meeting all students' needs and staff effectiveness, which is exactly what we're going to be discussing over the next 30 minutes. In fact, those weren't only the top 2, they were a runaway on with the challenges that district leaders face. And so we're going to cruise through 5 ways to address these top challenges, ways to address teaching and learning at our school. Before we dive into that content, we are big fans of note-taking in the AVID world. And so we'd love for you to grab a piece of paper or a digital way to take notes as we go through this. Sprinkled throughout this, we're going to give you some opportunities to reflect individually, set some goals, set some action items. And so we'd love for you to have something to jot down those thoughts on. A couple seconds to grab that, and then we'll dive in. LG, you good? You ready to go?
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
I switched to the last minute to standing just because I felt, you know, a little empowered if I was standing up here. So I hope this works out for everybody. Let's go ahead and dive in now to 5 ways to transform teaching and learning at my school. And again, thank you for joining us and for your interest and not being complacent, not saying that's cool, good, but I want to continue improving the teaching and learning that's going on in my school. So with no further ado, let's dive into way number 1. Again, I would love for you to write this down in your notes as we cruise here. So equity and access are big terms in education right now. And so to us, equity means meeting the individual needs of all students. And access means making sure that every one of my students have access to the courses of rigor that are most specific to them. But what we see a lot when we work with our schools across the country is that there are barriers a lot of times that are inhibiting access and equity in campuses. Sometimes those are institutional barriers. I was talking to a school a couple weeks ago that was very proud of the fact that they had a pre-assessment to get into pre-AP and AP courses, and if you didn't make at least an 80, you couldn't take honors courses at that school. If you made a 79, you were tracked a certain direction. They were proud of that, and I said, that sounds like an institutional barrier to access and equity. And then sometimes there's de facto things that are going on among the expectations of our community or our teaching staff. And so way number one that we identified was to identify and break down those barriers that might exist to access and equity. So LG, talk to us about at Anderson what that might look like. I see your beautiful teachers, your beautiful students there in the picture. And so how have you guys sought to break down barriers to access and equity?
Hey, most definitely. I'm very proud of my staff and my population, my diverse population, and that really sets our kids up for real life. But and that's what you see right here in the picture. We were actually able to work with Ron Clark's Hope and Wade King to rock our school. So we try to always find ways to, let our school stand out there. But what we really focus on, especially with our sixth graders coming in, ensuring that they have the most rigorous courses. That means that we're communicating with our feeder schools. Here in South Carolina at Anderson School District 5, our schools are set up where you're K through 5 for elementary, 6 through 8 for middle, and then, of course, 9 through 12 for high school. So it's very important that the lines of communications are open with the teachers of our feeder schools. So when our kids are placed here in classes, that they do receive the most rigorous classes. There are tests that the students can take to ensure that they're in the right classes. But also, I think there's something that has to be said about teacher input and looking at data to ensure that we are challenging our kids to the best of their ability. And through AVID, of course, they're receiving those safeguards. They're receiving the support systems that will ensure that they are very successful. Also, we try to allow for our classes, especially our AVID classes, to represent our student population. So we are targeting those kids, minority students, making sure that our classes are well represented. But we also have some school-wide strategies as well. We have a boot camp where all the sixth graders come through to see what are the expectations here at Robert Anderson Middle School. Every kid must go through that boot camp for the first 9 weeks, so they are caught up to what we have or our expectations here. We also have grade clinics and working on WICOR, and we'll talk about WICOR a tad bit later, but we also have binder clinics. Every kid here at this school receives a binder. Our organization is big, and so with the binder clinics, we have AVID elected students going to every homeroom and working with kids and ensuring that their binders are well organized. And for those kids who need a tad bit more help, we call them the students with more intensive needs. They are pulled out to allow for more time to make sure that their the binders are well organized. So again, there are just a few of the things that we're doing here at Robert Anderson. They seem to definitely be working.
Yeah, and then LG, I love everything that you just talked about there. We are big fans of acceleration whenever possible and remediation only when necessary. And it sounds like you guys are embodying that philosophy right there, and not just getting students into accelerated and rigorous courses, but providing the resources to make sure that they're successful once they're there. I was at the College Board Forum a couple weeks ago, and they were rolling out their new pre-AP materials, and over they said, hey, AP and pre-AP has for too long been an honors and elitist mindset in schools, and we are going to continue talking about our philosophy is that pre-AP should be open access for all students. It sounds like you guys are already down that road a little bit on assuring that there at Anderson. So as we wrap up number one, like I said earlier, we're going to give a little bit of time for reflection on each of the questions. And so we have a reflection question for you just to have 30 seconds or so to zoom this into your campus a little further. And so our reflection question, we'd love for you to at least think about, if not jot down some thoughts or goals, are what systems at my campus might be current barriers to access and equity for all students. 30 seconds to do some individual digging on that topic, and we'll keep rolling. All right, Kayla, I forgot to set a timer, so I hope that was about 30 seconds. Let's keep rolling to number two. Let's keep going. So we looked at the student component a little bit of access and equity, now talking about the teacher-faculty component there. One of our core beliefs is that to truly impact teaching and learning at my campus, we have to be thoughtful and intentional about providing access to high-quality professional development. LG, we see a picture of your faculty there, and I see some shirts that intrigue me. Tell us about what you guys do at Anderson to support professional development at the highest level.
Oh, yes, sir. Definitely. Some of the teachers in this picture, they were actually, again, as I mentioned earlier about rock your school, we were really rocking our school today. Some of the teachers in this pictures, they've taken the lead for some staff development. They've taken the lead for some faculty meetings and whatnot, and just really honing in on that teacher leadership portion. But as far as professional development, I believe that there are a lot of individuals in our buildings and everybody's building that are experts in their own right. So we allow for those individuals to lead, to share information with other folks that will definitely give success for our kids. Sometimes it's swallowed a tad bit easier when it's coming from the actual teachers, the practitioners, as opposed to the administration. So as many times as we can go with that, we definitely utilize that. In our building, luckily, we have some AVID trainers. Myself being one, very proud to be of the AVID family, but to have a national demonstration site, but also able to work with AVID staff developers across the world, across the nation, is just fantastic. But also, being that our school has increased a tad bit, so we have new teachers every year. So we run a new teacher academy. Our district has a new teacher academy, but here at Robert Anderson, we also have a new teacher academy where we're pulling in new teachers and giving them information that works here at Robert Anderson, giving them best practices that they can go implement this school year that would definitely increase student performance. Luckily we're surrounded around 3 universities: Anderson University, Furman University, but Clemson University as well. And those colleges work well with our district and our school to ensure that best practices are utilized in the classroom. We're participating in symposiums, bringing in some of their practitioners into our classrooms as well to make sure that we are utilizing what's working and staying abreast of those things. Also throughout the year, our district provides different opportunities for professional development. So I think we need to continue to refine our craft and make sure that we're staying aware of what's working. And I think the best way for that to happen is for communication to be open, not only from school to school, but really from classroom to classroom within our own schools.
And LG, everything you said there resonates with me. On number one, we looked at meeting the needs of all students, and it sounds like what you're trying to accomplish through your professional development system is meeting the needs of all teachers, that it's connecting with local resources in our university, it's meeting the needs of new teachers. It doesn't sound like it's 30 minutes of you standing in front of the faculty kind of with some boring, here's data we're going to examine or something like that. So I love the ideas that you just shared there. I'm sure there's some great things happening at the campuses of our participants, but I'm sure there's also some room to grow. And so on this topic number 2, our reflection question, again, 30 seconds just to kind of personalize this to your campus a little bit. How effective is the professional development at our campus? Specifically in resulting in increased student achievement. So 30 seconds just to kind of reflect on that. What are some things that are working? What are some things we can do better?
And Ben, while folks are reflecting, I want to encourage you, feel free to share your answers in our chat. We had a lot of folks last time with our last reflection question talking about how internet access is a barrier to students getting into and succeeding in rigorous courses. And keep this dialogue going over in our chat. And also be sure to submit questions for our Q&A time too, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kayla. And that strikes a chord with me, just thinking about if we have things in our pre-AP or AP classes that require resources at home, things like internet access, that's a barrier, and that's not equitable for all students. And so just identifying those, just being honest and transparent about those, and then thinking about what we can do as a system to address those. We have some of our partner schools that have intentionally set their Wi-Fi facing out towards their parking lot, and they talk about, parents with the kids in their car accessing that free Wi-Fi, or helping, supporting local restaurants that have hotspots, and just helping that not be a barrier that keeps kids from getting to the rigor and the access they need to be on that accelerated track. All right, we talked about teachers, we talked about students a little bit. I'd like to dig even a little bit deeper into that teacher conversation with number 3 here. So we talked about professional development. let's talk about teacher leadership. Just the recognition that there is positional leadership that happens on a campus, but we want to be engendering that disposition of leadership among our teachers, among our students, among everybody that's connected with our campus, think of themselves as a leader. We see a picture here where it looks like that might be happening. LG, tell us about what you guys have done to encourage teacher leadership at Anderson.
Definitely. This picture right here is actually a picture of my associate principal of instruction, Tiffany Osborne, and she's actually collaborating with a teacher in there. Actually, the students are taking on leadership positions right there in that very picture because we're doing collaborative study groups at the time. So again, it's very unique, and the kids have an opportunity to take on leadership positions. But ultimately in the school, as I mentioned earlier, it's just a tad bit different when the teachers stand out and they're presenting information. So we definitely are fans of collaborative leadership. Teachers are buying in and they're leading where they're at. Now, everyone's not called to be a grade level chair a grade level chair leader or a department head leader, but you can still lead from where you're at. So we encourage that totally. One thing that we've done here was allow for teachers to submit requests for book studies. Allow them to lead book studies, so they would turn in a book they would like to recommend for the staff, and they take ownership of it. They lead it, and matter of fact, we have 5 book studies that are getting ready to start, and so teachers can sign up and participate in those things, and while other teachers lead it. Also, we have teachers leading faculty meetings. Of course, it's better than me just standing up there and running my mouth. It's good for the teachers to come and talk and lead, and as I mentioned earlier, it just works a tad bit better when the teachers are they are definitely the ones working in the trenches, and so they know what's working and they can speak from their level. Another thing, as we are participating in Pineapple Reflections. Pineapple means hospitality and it is welcoming, and so we welcome teachers to record their lessons, their teaching, so they can refine their craft. A thing about it, we sort of look at it as a game film, just like if the coach is preparing for the game and preparing for the next game, they're looking at what worked on defense, what didn't work on offense. The teachers are doing the same thing in the classrooms as they look at their recording. What worked? How many times did I question my kids? And were the questions high level or were they low level questions? So the teachers can share that with us, or they can keep it to themselves. So we're definitely encouraging to do that. There are 4 domains: the AVID, culture, instruction, leadership, and cultural, instruction, leadership, and I can't think of that. I do apologize. Systems, thank you. Anyway, so with those 4, quarterly, we look at each one of those as school-wide to see what are some areas of refinement and what are some areas of commendations. And we are constantly looking at to make our school better than what it is right now. So the teachers are taking the leadership part of that. We're listening to them. The lines of communication are totally open, and no one is greater than the other. We all are taking it all in.
Yeah, LG, that's all just great recommendations, great things that you guys are doing. I know you guys are an AVID National Demonstration School out there in North Carolina. I was at a National Demonstration School in the Houston area yesterday working with a second-year principal, and she told us that in her first year, she felt like she was obligated to be the sage on the stage and be in front as the instructional leader, leading all of her professional development. It just wasn't being effective. And the switch flipped for her campus when she said, I needed to sit down and I need to let my teachers, just encourage each other and say what's working and look at actual student examples and what are we doing that's working and what are we doing that's really not increasing student effectiveness. And all of the things that you talked about there are just things that build a leadership mindset among our entire faculty and again, even transitioning down to our students. So the reflection question on number 3 is just to dig into that concept a little bit. What does that look like at your campus? How are teacher leaders provided opportunities to grow? And as they are built into and poured into as leaders, the opportunity then to pour out with leadership opportunities.
And Ben, while folks are thinking about that, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's popped questions into the chat and who's popped their responses to these reflection questions into the chat. Some of them I think are shared privately, but I will do my best to communicate that out when we send out the webinar recordings to anonymously communicate some of the ideas being shared and some of the concerns being shared. So thank you again, everyone who's sending those in.
Yeah, looking forward to having that Q&A time when we're done here just in a little bit, because we are over the halfway point, moving on to number 4. We've looked at kind of some philosophical ideas, some teacher-facing things, some student-facing things. For number 4, we'd like to zoom into the classroom level and specifically looking at instructional routines. So strategy number 4 is creating instructional routines that are aligned across the school, ideally, and maybe even across the district. So just the idea that, you know, oftentimes with our partner schools, when we start working with them, they have 7 periods, and a student would have 7 different ways of taking notes, or 7 different ways of organizing the materials, or even things like 7 different ways of turning in assignments at the end of the day. And so what we've been able to work and coach schools on is what would it look like to create a aligned method across your grade level, across your team, across ideally your entire campus for the instructional routines, so that we can have that synergy and that alignment in our student experience. So LG, I know this is another topic that you guys have had some success there with at Anderson. So talk to us about this picture and maybe some of the things that you guys have done to align instructional routines.
Okay. District-wide as well as school-wide, our purpose is for instruction to be relevant and rigorous. Right here you have this teacher, Ms. Crenshaw, one of our science teachers, just making science more than just standing in front of the classroom reading from a book. So the kids are actually participating in activities. And I think it's very important to teachers to understand their kids and for instruction to be culturally relevant, so they can apply what's taught in the classroom to their everyday lives, like applying Shakespeare or something to what is going on in their life. So it takes a little bit of time, but you can do it. And here at Robert Anderson, in our Anderson School District 5, we really surround our instruction with WICOR. And for those of you who are not familiar with WICOR, WICOR stands for Writing, Inquiry, Collaboration, Organization, and Reading. And so we are steadily practicing those things with writing. You know, we are discussing writing, but also while we're reading as practitioners, we're marking the text and writing in the margins and asking questions and things of such. With Inquiry, we are definitely concentrating on those project-based learning types of strategies. Collaboration, as I mentioned earlier, with collaborative study groups, the kids are taking the lead and they're leading discussions with their classrooms and asking higher-level questions, not only to the teacher, but of themselves. Those conversations are very impactful, and think about collaborative study groups, or just with kids in general working collaboratively. We're not only preparing them because we're not telling them to do it because it's the expectation in the classroom, it's the expectation in life. One thing that happens now, kids really don't talk to each other. We have social media to do those things, but that's a totally different thing. Organization, we have the binder clinics, as I mentioned earlier. We are a one-to-one district where we utilize Google Calendar consistently. So the kids are, at the beginning of the year, they go through like a clinic that all the kids come to the auditorium. We have our technology teachers setting up Google Classrooms for the kids and Google Calendar so they can log in and select their teacher's Google Calendar so they can get all the information. And then, of course, with reading, we're constantly reading at all times. And it's very important for the kids, not only for them to see us read in the classroom, but let them see us reading during lunch or reading, talking to them at lunch as well, but reading during lunch, reading in the hallways, or constantly supporting that part of reading. And I think with those, that WICOR being our foundation is only going to give an equation for success.
Yeah, fantastic, LG. What I hear in that, it sounds like you guys have some core values of what we do instructionally that transcends all of our teachers, all of our classrooms, all of our students. You know, when we read, we also mark the text, and we probably do that in an aligned way. When we do collaboration, we have strategies like collaborative study groups that are being done across the campus. We have systems that work not just for organizing our materials through this binder clinic, but even organizing our time through Google Calendar. And, you know, we just see that our most effective schools, our most impactful schools are the ones that have identified those core strategies that can be aligned across our system. So fantastic. So that was kind of zooming into the instructional level. And so we just wanted to give you a little bit of time to kind of develop some empathy for students on your campus. And so if you are a student walking through 6, 7, 8 periods of class at your school, how aligned are the instructional routines that I might experience on that day? Or is there some disconnectedness, that there's a way I do it in third period that's different than fourth period? Take 30 seconds to reflect on that topic, maybe jot down some notes or some action items out of that conversation.
And again, thank you all who are submitting questions and submitting responses. The questions are great. I'm getting very excited about the Q&A time.
Yeah, and just to echo what we're talking about here, I'm just kind of reading the chats as they're coming in also. Everything from, hey, I did a professional development with my entire faculty on collaborative study groups yesterday, which I hear teacher leadership, I hear alignment in that, to other teachers that are saying, nope, we have no alignment. Different strategies, no alignment. And again, there's no gotcha on this, but it's just things for us to think about of what potentially we could move the needle to transform teaching and learning at our school. And we're on the home stretch here. On to number 5. So we've zoomed all the way into the classroom. We want to zoom all the way back out to not just students and teachers and faculty, but looking at the entire community, the ecosystem that surrounds your students. And so strategy number 5 for transforming teaching and learning is figuring out ways to foster buy-in. We just see that as being so important, not just from our students, not just from our faculty, but even extending to our community, that there's just this network of support that our students and our teachers feel supported by. LG, I know this is something that you guys have done an amazing job there. Talk to us about what that has looked like.
Definitely. This picture right here is a picture about 2 years ago. We went through a tremendous change here. Our population, we merged. School joined in with us. So our population went from 700 to right at 1,300. So this picture right here is a picture of our superintendent having a ribbon cutting ceremony for our community block party. And above his head, you see a banner with different organizations such as Bilo, Ingles, Chick-fil-A, Walmart, and Walgreens. They all came together to support this merger. And I think that it's very important that the community is invested in what's going on here at your school, because we're going to need them. And you know what? They're going to need us. They want students who can graduate and come and work into the workforce with the necessary skills to be successful. And so this was a fantastic opportunity, and I think that culture is very important, and so the community plays a very important part with that. Another thing, too, that we try to foster buy-in for the community is that we utilize social media. We have decided that we will be in control of the pen of who's going to write our story. We're going to write our own story, and we're not going to let anyone else do it. And so we utilize social media, and social media can be a very powerful venue to utilize. So you'll see #RamsInspire, where teachers are posting pictures as to what's going on in the classroom, what's going on outside the classroom, because we want to give them something positive to talk about. Another thing, too, at the beginning of the school year, we invited all of our faculty, their families, and whoever they wanted to invite to a faculty cookout to set the year off right, because family is vital to ensure that our school is successful. We want our kids to come here and feel like they're a family. We want the community to know that this school is a family. And so that was a good way to throw it to start it off. And then also with vertical planning with our feeder schools. We work tirelessly and communicate tremendously with our feeder schools, our middle schools, but also our high school as well, to ensure that we know who we're getting from the elementary school level, and then the high school know which type of kids they're receiving from us. So it's very important that those lines of communication are open at all times. And again, going back to family, that is definitely number one to ensure that we are successful here at Robert Anderson.
And I love that word, family. When we talk to our most effective schools, the students talk about the family environment, the teachers talk about that, and even like you're saying here, the community comes into that. We eat together, we celebrate together, we tweet together, and we are able just to kind of make that narrative go in the direction that we want it to go. I love that. I love that conversation. I love that concept being applied to education. And so this final kind of reflection question related to this one is, how are we doing on that? What might we do to foster a culture of commitment through our students, our faculty, and even bleeding out into our communities and community partnerships there? 30 seconds to jot down some ideas. And so as we start to wrap up our time together here and move into the Q&A part of our time, as we design these 5 ways that we just kind of considered big rocks when it comes to transforming teaching and learning at our school, some of the themes that were woven through that is instruction, high quality instruction in every class, every day for every student. The systems that are in place to support that high quality instruction and success. the leadership that's not just top-down leadership, but shared leadership, all resulting in this culture of support and success for all of our students. This concept of instruction systems, leadership, and culture is what we do in AVID. This is how our support model is set up. For those of you guys that are existing AVID partners, we appreciate your partnership, and we just appreciate the opportunity to come alongside you and reflect and dig deeper into each of these topics. And for those of you that have joined us that aren't AVID partners, this is what we do. We would love to come alongside you and help you dig into each of these 5 ways, each of these 4 domains. In fact, this is what we call AVID school-wide, when we truly can impact the long-term educational outcomes of every single student that's within our system through the instruction systems, leadership, and culture. We see a school-wide culture that just moves students in the direction that we want them to move. And so we would love to continue to come alongside our existing partners. And if you're not one of our partners yet, we would love to talk to you more about that. Kayla, tell us how we can keep this conversation going as we kind of wrap up our presentation time here.
Yes, Ben, thank you. So as Ben said, we want to keep the conversation going with you. We know that some of you might need to sign off now because we scheduled the webinar for 30 minutes, but we are going to stay on for at least 15 more minutes and do some Q&A, so we hope you can hang around. If not, here are some different ways to connect with us. We've got our website, avid.org, if you'd like to learn more about us. We also have Robert Anderson Middle School's website up there, so you can see all the great work happening with LG and his team. We encourage you to connect on Twitter as well. There are handles. And you can get in touch with us through email or through our website at avid.org/contact. And don't worry about jotting all these down. We will share all these links when we send out the recording next week. So I want to encourage everyone right now, just get in your questions because we are about to roll right into Q&A. LG and Ben, if you're ready, we've got a great handful of questions to go. And again, y'all keep submitting them, keep turning them into us because we're going to keep this Q&A going for a little while. So first question, how do you balance systems for all with the need to personalize learning?
I guess that's for me. That's for me, right?
Sure, either one of you.
Okay. Well, and the question was, I think the question was, read it one more time for me, if you don't mind, please, Kayla.
You got it. How do you balance systems for all with the need to personalize learning?
That's a fantastic question. It's one of those things. It's a not tiring, but it's an interesting balance in that. Ultimately, I want my teachers to set goals for themselves, set smart goals for themselves. And as much as we can have their personalized goals fall into the school goals, I think we'll be even more successful. I think that it's very important that conversation, as I mentioned earlier, communication is key. Even though right now I have currently a staff over 125, that's still not an excuse for me not to be able to sit down and talk to the teachers to see what their needs are and help them best get to that situation. I had the opportunity to talk to one of my teachers this morning, and she was asking questions as to, she's new, she wants to know what's going on. I mean, she just feels like she's sort of behind the ball, but the conversation led to, hey, how can I help you? What can I do to you? What I've noticed when I've been into your classroom, I've noticed that I've seen this, I've seen that, and I've seen this. How can we get you there? And what ends up happening is that those things that she wants for herself ends up being the things that we need for our school. So as much as we can tie those things in together, I think we'll be able to, for lack of better words, kill birds.
Yeah, and Kayla, the only thing I would add to that is, a well-designed system for all allows for some differentiation and personalization also. That there is choice within that maybe, hey, we're going to all focus on organization and we're going to do this school-wide binder, but how you set that binder up, there's some choice for the student, there's some choice for the teacher to meet those unique needs.
Awesome. And Ben and LG, you both hit the nail on the head, and I'm a former AVID teacher as well, and I can speak, and so is Ben, and we can both speak to the fact that there are systems in place, but you do personalize to meet those unique needs, just as Ben said. Next question, we have an AVID elementary school principal who's asked, you know, we've heard a lot about middle schools and secondary, but how do these tips apply to an elementary campus?
Yeah, I'll take that one because I get to work with the entire college readiness system, which for those of you guys that don't know, you know, starts as early as kindergarten, and we have 60 or 70 higher ed campuses on our radar also. And so we really do kind of think of this whole conversation as a continuum and a progression of skill development. And so as I'm looking back at the 5 that we've talked about here, to me, these are just as, if not even more applicable in elementary than they are in secondary. You know, maybe access and equity aren't as big of a deal in elementary. They might be. I think maybe that plays out in expectations a little bit more. My kids are in elementary school right now, and you know, I can start to see some differences in expectations among different students. But all the way that we think of all of this skill development, like the instructional routines that we talked about in number 4, is that elementary is the perfect opportunity to start setting that foundation of support and expectation and routines. You know, we intentionally use that word routines to talk about the habits of behavior, the habits of mind that students develop to set them up for success. And so it might be a little bit different, and most of our examples were from secondary, but we really, you know, the AVID College Readiness System is applicable in elementary, as well as these 5 ways that we talked about.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ben. LG, we've got a question for you. We have some folks who would like to know more about that 9-week boot camp for breaking down barriers to access and equity.
That's awesome. You know what? I saw that in there, so I went ahead and loaded it up in our Google Drive. So what it looks like, so when the students, again, a lot of the kids, especially 6th graders, they come into Robert Anderson not knowing anything about AVID, and a handful of kids actually went through the AVID interview. And so being that we're school-wide, the AVID strategies are not just limited to those kids in the AVID elective. So we start off, and I can name the lessons. The first one is, what is AVID, and why do we have AVID at Rams? And then we'll introduce WICOR, because, and this is helpful for, I mentioned about the New Teacher Academy. This is helpful for our new teachers as well, because being that we are a demonstration site, we're a school-wide AVID site, new teachers will come in, they may be hired in July, and they're going to come in and start teaching in August into the school that's always using AVID acronyms, so or AVID strategy. So from the teacher standpoint, they're meeting regularly to be introduced to AVID strategy, so they do not have to wait until Summer Institute. But going back to the kids with the 9 weeks boot camp, we're moving from why do we have AVID to looking at C notes. And, of course, we're not just bound by C notes here at Robert Anderson, but we're looking at C notes, focus note taking. And then we talk about marking the text and SMART goals and doing collaborative study groups. So we have our one of our AVID teachers pull those kids, runs through the PE courses, because every kid here must go through PE, and just spend some time, a class time, teaching these kids the ins and outs of what AVID looks like here at Robert Anderson Middle School. So it's been very helpful because, again, I think AVID is not just beneficial for AVID elective kids, it's beneficial for our kids overall, in general, school-wide. So we move from what is AVID to our last lesson being the levels of questioning. So this is our 2nd year doing it, and I must say that it's been very helpful for our kids.
Kayla, I'd love to build on that just for a second also, because that resonates with, I mentioned I was at a school, in middle school in Houston yesterday, and they said one of the transitions that they've experienced is that there used to be so many people in their system that could keep kids from getting into pre-AP or honors coursework. That the parents could say no, the kids could say no, the counselor was saying no, and there was all of these gatekeepers. And they worked hard to get more and more students through those gates, break down those barriers, and get students in there. And then they implemented a rule that you couldn't drop that pre-AP course until the quarterly mark. And so the kids that after a week or two said, oh my gosh, I've never experienced rigor like this, said, I know I got to stick with it for 6 or 7 weeks. And that greatly impacted the retention. And then even at that 9-week mark, it was still hey, even though you're not quite there yet, we're going to support you, and we're going to remediate you, and we're going to fill some of those gaps, because I think you can do this. I think you can stay in there. And what they talked about, which was the same experience at my school, is that when our honors pre-AP and my school AP teachers went from my job is to weed out folks mentality to a mentality of my job is to keep everybody in here that I can, not to water anything down. I'm going to keep the level of rigor high, but I'm also going to increase the level of support and relationship and relevance to help them be successful here. That's just the game changer dynamic. And that 9-week mark tends to be a really strategic time to identify gaps, but say, I'm not giving up on you. We're going to help you fill some of those gaps.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ben and LG. Our next question is, I think, for LG. Other than leading PD, what other opportunities do you provide your teachers to be leaders?
Oh, okay. Well, I would say that it can go from doing a robocall, like this may be minute to some, but it's pretty big in our case. It can go from doing a robocall. So every Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, I send a 4 o'clock robocall. But sometimes teachers take opportunity to do it, so they're not just hearing my voice. And that's a pretty good thing, too, because, again, it allows for leadership and them, again, most importantly, for the parents not to hear my voice every Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock. And some there's some things behind the scenes, too, as far as providing, going to professional development, going to Ron Clark, also going to classrooms and doing observations. And because sometimes we see teachers who have done a fantastic job of teaching a concept and they have a little bit of coaching about themselves. They can go to somebody else's classroom and see some of the things that sort of working and not working, but you got to be very careful with that because you want to make sure you're working. There are some teachers that will take that well, but there are some folks who will not see that as a good thing as another teacher coming in and critiquing them. So we try to have those conversations with teachers who need some help that it's not always coming from us. There are some of your peer folks who can bring in some opportunities to teach you new things or give you new skills to bring into your classroom. So you have teachers observing, you have teachers pulling kids to lead student panels, and they can come back to us and bring back new ideas that the kids have, and just sort of out of the box with that. In that way that, again, teachers are not just subject to their own classroom. They can sort of expand outside their classroom, talk to other teachers, talk to kids, and bring that information back to the leadership team.
Kayla, one of our coworkers just finished her doctorate, and the topic of her dissertation was on that collaborative walkthrough model, and just the expectation that teachers get to go into other teachers' classrooms and see what they're doing and share what's working. And she said the schools that it didn't work at was the schools where it was kind of hit or miss, and there was kind of that resentment piece, or why are you in my classroom? The schools where it worked really effectively, there was an expectation that every teacher would do it, get into other classrooms, and every teacher would be visited. And when that just became the baseline, all of a sudden, again, that switch kind of flipped a little bit, and transformation started to happen. They communicated that their core value was feedback, and they had just an expectation of continuous improvement. Please come in and look at me and give me feedback because I want to improve, because as a school we're improving, and I want my students to be improving.
Fantastic. I love that. And, right in line with kind of, Ben, you might have answered this a little bit, but you both might have more to add. What strategies have been successful in your systems for creating buy-in and bringing reluctant teachers on board?
Yeah, I'll take a first crack at that because that's one we struggled with for a long. So I was an AVID teacher for 7 years here in the Dallas area, and what didn't work was me as the AVID teacher standing in front and saying, let me tell you what to do. Let me tell you the strategies that you need to implement. That was met with a lot of resentment and resistance. When we said, hey, we're not trying to tell you what to do, but we are trying to provide options for you. And maybe you've been trying to figure out how to get students to take notes, or students to review for tests more effectively, or students to talk when you do group work. Let me just add some tools to your toolbox. Let me just share some options that you have. None of these are being forced upon you, but we want to provide you with the tools so that you can be a master teacher, a skilled technician there in your classroom. And that, difference in messaging of, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm just trying to provide you with some resources. The last couple of years that we used that approach changed the way that information was received.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, two things. You're right. Just the way you talk to the teachers, the way we talk to the teachers and ask them by starting off the conversation, hey, what do you think? What worked? What do you think worked in this whole lesson? What didn't work? And that can, if they can come out and say it first, then you can build upon it instead of like you said, being, hey, this didn't work, this didn't work. But another thing as well, we tried this year's the pineapple model, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, about teachers recording themselves teaching, and they are going in there and I mean, the video is right there because sometimes you do not acknowledge what you're doing while you're teaching it. It's not until you actually watch the video and realize, oh, I did that. Maybe I should not have done that. So that whole pineapple model that we utilized this year has been an eye-opener for the teachers, for them to be able to critique them. And the thing about the pineapple model, we told the teachers that you can keep it to yourself or you can share it with us. And surprisingly, a lot of teachers wanted to share it with us so that we can utilize it and talk to them about it and how they can fix any wrongs that they possibly had during their lessons.
It's good.
You guys are just making me smile over here. This is such good advice. It's so good to hear. Next question. Let's see. We had a person write in that their central administration in their district is kind of heavy-handed and doesn't allow much autonomy. How best do you overcome something like that so teachers can feel empowered to lead?
And Kayla, just to build on that question or maybe expand the scope a little bit, we see the same thing at the campus level, of what do I do with the heavy-handed administrator, principal, evaluator, that I saw that in some of the chats of like, no, that's just not the way that we do things at my school or in my district. All right, LG, I bought you a little time. Tell us what you about that.
Well, I've been able to stand on the shoulders of two principals before me where AVID was already in place here at Robert Anderson Middle School. And of course, it was not because of them only, it was because we had a supportive central office. And so luckily, I'm not able to really give examples as to how the office has not been supportive because my school is a Title I school. And this school it was built in 2011, but prior to that, it was called Softwood Middle School. And we needed something to help our Title I students, who help our lower achieving kids. And think about AVID, it just doesn't target lower achieving kids, it targets all kids who need their assistance. But AVID was our way to put our school on the map and increase student achievement at Softwood and moving on to Robert Anderson. But the district recognized that, and the principals before me were able to push this life-changing piece here at Robert Anderson Middle School. The only thing I can say, too, that I would advise folks to go and visit other schools and let other schools tell their story of how, this has been able to change the culture of the school and change the student achievement of the school. Because sometimes it just takes a conversation with someone who's actually gone through the process to change somebody's mind.
Kayla, I'm going to just throw a little life philosophy at this one also that I think is applicable in a lot of different contexts. I spent a lot of my educational career, and a lot of teachers do, being frustrated about the things that are outside of our control. That really, there's parts of these things we're talking about that you're not going to be able to change the superintendent. You're not going to be able to change people's minds necessarily. And so just flipping that and just constantly being thoughtful about what is within my circle of control. And that's where our heavy investment needs to be. What's just outside of that in my circle of influence? I invest some there. And what's completely outside of my circle of control and influence? And let me not even waste my time and energy there. And what I've experienced in my career and education experience is when we do that, our circle of control and influence grows and expands. And all of a sudden, there's other teachers that are coming on board now. And all of a sudden, the grade level's coming on board. And the school's coming on board. And now a district and central administration is coming on board. Mother Teresa is the quote I always like to use. The way to change the world is to start with our own head and heart and hands and work outward from there. And that's just kind of an overlay on a lot of these challenges and concerns that we're hearing.
Excellent. Thank you both
so much.
much.
Bring Mother Teresa into the conversation, didn't you?
Right there, yeah. Thanks for being so candid and so helpful in your responses. We've got a really good question. We have one of our educators listening is in an area that's considered high needs. It's an area that's kind of been riddled with drug problems, with different issues, and it's been really tough to get families involved. And then it's also been tough to get local businesses involved because there have been, crimes against those businesses by some of the students. So it's kind of a torn community. And they're already working on social emotional learning, but is there anything else that you think they can do to tackle these types of issues and get the community involved?
Let me throw one thing. I know, LG, you got some wisdom to share on that. But in addition to what I just shared about that circle of control and influence, which, is the Stephen Covey, 7 Habits kind of concept there. The other thing that I've seen in this is just celebrate the heck out of successes. If it's the small, and that's just a good philosophy to bring to life in your personal life, in your classroom. The kid that has been tardy 17 days in a row and finally shows up on time, celebrate the heck out of that. The kid that finally made a 70, celebrate that. And the time that our school finally does something right, a kid does something right, figuring out how LG said, we have the pin, and we got to take those opportunities to build the narrative and the culture that we want. Again, just starting with what we can control and working out from there. Broken down relationships among families and communities they didn't get like that overnight. They're not going to be fixed overnight. And so it's just that, constant work to repair the brokenness there.
I definitely agree. One of the things is that think about if we're going back to AVID here. We have kids who are on waiting lists who want to be an AVID, and it's been a life changer. But because it's so wanted by the kids gonna have to, and the parents, they're gonna have to meet certain expectations. So that requires participation on the parents' part, and so that brings in some parental involvement. But going back, just building off of what Ben said, the only thing I think nowadays that the clientele has changed so much from years past, and that the way you use receive information is totally different because everything's on social media now, and that's a good thing. Sometimes people see social media as a no, let's not bring that in here in the school. But no, I think we should utilize that as much as we possibly can, because I'm sure well over the majority of the folks in our schools have a Facebook or Instagram or a Snapchat. And so as a school, we need to use those mechanisms to really push what's going on in our schools. Also with our local community and business partners, it's very important for them to understand that, hey, in about 10, 15 years, these are going to be the kids who will be running our neighborhoods. They're going to be the ones who are going to bring in industries, and they're going to be our workforce. So if you buy into our school, come in, donate some money, or not necessarily donate some money, because sometimes people always think it's always about money. But if they can come and donate some time, allow us to come and do some community service projects around your businesses or your facilities, then that'll be a good way to at least begin the conversation to bettering our communities in our neighborhood. So again, just sort of thinking outside the box, and just going back to what I said earlier, just not always thinking that business partners always have to be about money, but it can be about time and all those things. So
trying to figure out what's going on. Again, the internet is down. Sorry for the inconvenience.
So that definitely, that's pretty much, I think that would be a good starting point. I do apologize because I am at work and my intercom just went off, so I apologize for that.
Hey, Kayla, can I one more thing on that also? I just kind of feel convicted to do this. Ashley, I see your question there. And what LG and I just gave you were kind of head answers, action items. The heart answer, I just want to communicate that one, I heard for you, I heard for that situation that's going on there, but I'm so proud of you and your school for continuing to fight the good fight. And so I just encourage you, it's not going to be easy. That's a tough situation that you've found yourself in for. And so I just encourage you to continue doing the good work that you're doing there and keep fighting for your kids and your community, because there's not a lot of people probably lined up to do that. And so we are just so appreciative of you diving in and investing and not giving up on those kids and on that community.
100%. So we're coming up at the end of the hour. I've got 2 more questions I want to ask while we're here. And of course, you guys are going to have all of our contact info and can communicate with us. It doesn't stop at the end of this webinar. But to the two questions. First question is for you, LG. What does the vertical articulation with your feeder schools look like? Do the 6th grade teachers meet with the 5th grade teachers? What topics are discussed? What's prioritized?
Oh, definitely. It starts with the principals first. Over the summer, I have 6 feeder elementary schools. Of the 6, 4 of them are Title I schools, and then my school feeds into 1 high school. So you have 6 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high. And so what we do during the summer, we have a luncheon, talk about what works, what are our needs from the cluster standpoint. That includes the middle, the high, and the elementary. In other words, what are some business partners things that we can do? What are some things that we can do? Like one thing, for instance, at the high school, one day during a football game, we allow all the feeder schools to come up to the high school and run on the field and to support the Rams. All of our schools have the same mascot of the Rams. So we talked about that, but we're also talking about our kindergarten kids coming in way behind the mark compared to other schools compared to us. And so what are we doing to do that? Because every grade level, we're looking at growth because every grade level must have growth. Every grade level, we're talking and trying to keep up to ensure that the kids are decreasing the amount of or the lack of growth there in each grade level. And so we have our 6th grade teachers go down to the elementary school to talk and sometimes sit in some classes of the 5th grade teachers. And then our high school teachers, our science, social study, ELA, math, they'll come down to our 8th grade classes to see a good look as to what is working or how their kids are going to look once they come up to the high school. So we're talking about data. We're talking about the community. We're talking about how can we get business partners in. We're talking about mentoring. But the biggest thing is that one thing that sort of works in my favor too is that of the 6 elementary principals that are in our district, I've worked with them in some format. In other words, like two of them were my assistant principals at one time. One of them we taught together at the elementary school. And so I think that, and then the high school principal, my first job was I taught 5th grade, and he hired me as a teacher. And so I think that's very important too, because we don't have to go about egos, and we're all friends. So, and we're all in it to make sure that all the kids are going to get the best education they possibly can get. Now, everybody doesn't have that same, situation. I'm just unique in that. But I think it is important that, once we close the door, we will go in there and do what's best for our clusters to ensure that our kids are going to get the best education they possibly can get.
Ooh, Leonard, I don't know how anyone can know you and not be your friend. But that is great advice. Thank you so much. So our last question before we'll go ahead and end our webinar for today, but like I said, remember you can keep the conversation going. I threw that contact slide back up. Question is, I'm interested in supporting AVID school-wide. What is one way to most effectively do this?
So, yeah, Kayla, I'll take that one, because that's just kind of like, what is the system of AVID supposed to look like? And so in secondary, we have the AVID electives, and we expect the AVID elective teachers to be kind of the champions for AVID starting to spread and permeate school-wide. The next circle of support is that AVID site team. And so if you are on the site team, that's kind of your responsibility. And if you're not, that would be a great first people to track down and figure out, who are you guys? When do you meet? How can I get involved? And then that site team, the idea there is that these 5 ways that we just talked about, these 4 domains of instruction, systems, leadership, and culture, just identifying like what's working at our school and where are some gaps, and choosing 2 or 3 of those things. Maybe it's an instructional strategy. Maybe it's a cultural issue that we have. Maybe it's some gatekeepers that are inhibiting access and equity for all students. And then we're going to go out and be the champions to address that. Keeping in mind that, you don't have positional authority as the AVID site team. You do have the disposition of authority or leadership. And so, how can I articulate that as, hey, we are all on the same page and wanting the same things for our students. So let's, think about our culture. Let's think about a new strategy for how we, for how we take notes or something like that. But yeah, definitely tracking down your AVID elected teachers and your AVID site team is the way to spread these you know, we say AVID strategies, but really they're just best practice strategies. And really what AVID is at its core is the philosophy that all students should have the opportunity to be prepared for college readiness and to have that choice available to them upon high school graduation. So I appreciate you asking that question and saying I want to be part of the team that champions for all of our students.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ben. So that brings us right up to the end of the hour. And I want to thank Principal Galloway for joining us, LG. I want to thank Ben Solomon for joining us, and I want to thank all of you for joining us and sticking around for the question and answer. We will get this recording out to you early next week, and we appreciate everything you're doing for your kids. Have an awesome day, guys.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.